Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Thought I'd do a few readings from An Unentangled Knowing, collection of teachings by Upasika Kee Nanayon, who was a 20th century lay practitioner in the Thai forest tradition, quite well known, and Ajahn Geoff did these translations that have been in this publication for some years now. So I'll do a few readings. This one is entitled Sabbe Dhamma Anatta, on page 30, given on July 9th, 1971. One night I was sitting in meditation outside in the open air, my back straight as an arrow, firmly determined to make the mind quiet. But even after a long time, it wouldn't settle down. So I thought, I've been working at this for many days now, and yet my mind won't settle down at all. It's time to stop being so determined and to simply be aware of the mind. I started to take my hands and feet out of the meditation posture, but at the moment I had unfolded one leg, but had yet to unfold the other, I could see that my mind was like a pendulum swinging more and more slowly, until it stopped. Then there arose an awareness that was sustained by itself. Slowly, I put my legs and hands back into position. At the same time, the mind was in a state of awareness, absolutely and solidly still, seeing clearly into the elementary phenomena of existence as they arose and disbanded, changing in line with their nature, and also seeing a separate condition inside, with no arising, disbanding, or changing, a condition beyond birth and death. Something very difficult to put clearly into words, because it was a realization of the elementary phenomena of nature, completely internal and individual. After a while, I slowly got up and lay down to rest. This state of mind remained there as a stillness that sustained itself deep down inside. Eventually, the mind came out of this state and gradually returned to normal. From this, I was able to observe how practice consisting of nothing but fierce desire simply upsets the mind and keeps it from being still. But when one's awareness of the mind is just right, an inner awareness will arise naturally of its own accord. Because of this clear inner awareness, I was able to continue knowing the facts of what's true and false, right and wrong from that point on, and it enabled me to know that the moment when the mind let go of everything was a clear awareness of the elementary phenomena of nature, because it was an awareness that knew within and saw within of its own accord, not something you can know or see by wanting. For this reason, the Buddha's teaching, Sabbe Dhamma Anatta, all phenomena are not self, tells us not to latch on to any of the phenomena of nature, whether conditioned or unconditioned. From that point on, I was able to understand things and let go of attachments step by step. This talk is entitled The Pure Present, June 3rd, 1964, page 24. We have to catch sight of this sensation of knowing when the mind gains knowledge of anything and yet isn't aware of itself, to see how it latches onto things. Physical form, feeling, perception, thought fabrications, and consciousness. We have to probe on in and look on our own. We can't use the teachings we've memorized to catch sight of these things. That won't get us anywhere at all. We may remember the body is inconstant, but even though we can say it, we can't see it. We have to focus on in to see exactly how the body is inconstant, to see how it changes, and we have to focus on feelings, pleasant, painful, neutral, to see how they change. The same holds true with perceptions, thought fabrications, and so forth. We have to focus on them, investigate them, contemplate them to see their characteristics as they actually are. Even if you can see these things for only a moment, it'll do you a world of good. You'll be able to catch yourself. The things you thought you knew, you didn't really know at all. This is why the knowledge we gain in the practice has to keep changing through many, many levels. It doesn't stay on just one level. So even when you're able to know arising and disbanding with every moment right in the present, if your contemplation isn't continuous, it won't be very clear. You have to know how to contemplate the bare sensation of arising and disbanding, simply arising and disbanding, without any labels of good or bad. Just keep with the pure sensation of arising and disbanding. When you do this, other things will come to intrude. But no matter how they intrude, it's still a matter of arising and disbanding. So you can keep your stance with arising and disbanding in this way. If you start labeling things, it gets confusing. All you need to do is to keep looking at the right spot, the bare sensation of arising and disbanding. Simply make sure that you really keep watch of it, whether there's awareness of sights, sounds, tastes, smells, or tactile sensations. Just stay with the sensation of arising and disbanding. Don't go labeling the sight, sound, smell, taste, or tactile sensation. If you keep watch in this way, you're with the pure present, and there won't be any issues. When you keep watch in this way, you're keeping watch on inconstancy, on change, as it actually occurs. Because even the arising and disbanding changes. It's not the same thing arising and disbanding all the time. First, this sort of sensation arises and disbands. Then that sort of arises and disbands. If you keep watch on bare arising and disbanding like this, you're sure to arrive at insight. But if you keep watch with labels, quote, that's the sound of a cow, or that's the bark of a dog, you won't be watching the bare sensation of sound, the bare sensation of arising and disbanding. As soon as there's labeling, thought fabrications come along with it. Your senses of touch, sight, hearing, and so forth will continue their bare arising and disbanding, but you won't know it. Instead, you'll label everything, sights, sounds, etc., and then there will be attachments, feelings of pleasure and displeasure, and you won't know the truth. The truth keeps going along on its own. Sensations keep arising and then disbanding. If we focus right here at the consciousness of the bare sensation of sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and tactile sensations, we'll be able to gain insight quickly. If we know how to observe things in this way, we'll be able to see easily when the mind is provoked by passion or greed, and even more easily when it's provoked by anger. As for delusion, that's something more subtle, something you have to take a great interest in and investigate clearly. You'll come to see all sorts of hidden things, how the mind is covered with many, many layers of film. It's really fascinating. But then that's what insight meditation is for, to open your eyes so that you can know and see, so that you can destroy your delusion and ignorance. This next one, on page 26, The Deceits of Knowing, given on January 29th, 1964. You have to find approaches for contemplating and probing at all times so as to catch sight of the flickerings of awareness, to see in what way it streams out to know things. Be careful to catch sight of it both when its knowing is right and when it's wrong. Don't mix things up, taking wrong knowledge for right or right knowledge for wrong. This is something extremely important for the practice, this question of right and wrong knowing, for these things can play tricks on you. When you gain any new insights, don't go getting excited. You can't let yourself get excited by them at all, because it doesn't take long for your insight to change right now before your very eyes. It's not going to change at some other time or place. It's changing right now. You have to know how to observe, how to acquaint yourself with the deceits of knowledge. Even when it's correct knowledge, you can't latch onto it. Even though we may have standards for judging what sort of knowledge is correct in the course of our practice, don't go latching onto correct knowledge, because correct knowledge is inconstant. It changes. It turns into false knowledge, or into knowledge that is even more correct. You have to contemplate things very carefully, very, very carefully, so that you won't fall for your knowledge, thinking, I've gained right insight, I know better than other people. So that you won't start assuming yourself to be special. The moment you assume yourself, your knowledge immediately turns wrong. Even if you don't let things show outwardly, the mere mental event in which the mind labels itself is a form of wrong knowing that obscures the mind from itself in an insidious way. This is why meditators who tend not to contemplate things, who don't catch sight of the deceits of every form of knowledge, right and wrong, good and bad, tend to get bogged down in their knowledge. The knowledge that deceives them into thinking, what I know is right, gives rise to strong pride and conceit within them, without their even realizing it. This is because the defilements are always getting into the act without our realizing it. They're insidious, and in their insidious way, they keep getting into the act as a matter of course, for the defilements and mental effluents are still there in our character. Our practice is basically a probing deep inside, from the outer levels of the mind to the inner ones. This is an approach that requires a great deal of subtlety and precision. The mind has to use its own mindfulness and discernment to dig everything out of itself, leaving just the mind in and of itself, the body in and of itself, and then keep watch of them. This last one is a bit longer and may not make it through the whole reading, but there's a place or two to stop if I need to. And it's called Aware, Right at Awareness, given on November 3rd, 1975, page 16. The mind, if mindfulness and awareness are watching over it, won't meet with any suffering as a result of its actions. If suffering does arise, we'll be immediately aware of it and able to put it out. This is one point of the practice we can work at constantly. And we can test ourselves by seeing how refined and subtle our all-around awareness is inside the mind. Whenever the mind slips away and goes out to receive external sensory contact, can it maintain its basic stance of mindfulness or internal awareness? The practice we need to work at in our everyday life is to have constant mindfulness, constant all-around present awareness like this. This is something we work at in every posture, sitting, standing, walking, and lying down. Make sure that your mindfulness stays continuous. Living in this world, the mental and physical phenomena of these five aggregates gives us plenty to contemplate. We must try to watch them, to contemplate them, so that we can understand them. Because the truths we must learn how to read in this body and mind are here to be read with every moment. We don't have to get wrapped up with any other extraneous themes, because all the themes we need are right here in the body and mind. As long as we can keep the mind constantly aware all around, we can contemplate them. If you contemplate mental and physical events to see how they arise and disband right in the here and now, and don't get involved with external things, like sights making contact with the eyes or sounds with the ears, then there really aren't a lot of issues. The mind can be at normalcy, at equilibrium, calm and undisturbed by defilement or the stresses that come from sensory contact. It can look after itself and maintain its balance. You'll come to sense that if you're aware, right at awareness in and of itself, without going out to get involved in external things like the mental labels and thoughts that will tend to arise, the mind will see their constant arising and disbanding, and won't be embroiled in anything. This way it can be disengaged, empty, and free. But if it goes out to label things as good or evil, as me or mine, or gets attached to anything, it will become unsettled and disturbed. You have to know that if the mind can be still, totally and presently aware, and capable of contemplating with every activity, then blatant forms of suffering and stress will dissolve away. Even if they start to form, you can be alert to them and disperse them immediately. Once you see this actually happening, even in only the beginning stages, it can disperse a lot of the confusion and turmoil in your heart. In other words, don't let yourself dwell on the past or latch on to thoughts of the future. As for the events arising and passing away in the present, you have to leave them alone. Whatever your duties, simply do them as you have to, and the mind won't get worked up about anything. It will be able, to at least some extent, to be empty and still. This one thing is something you have to be very careful about. You have to see this for yourself. That if your mindfulness and discernment are constantly in charge, the truths of the arising and disbanding of mental and physical phenomena are always there for you to see, always there for you to know. If you look at the body, you'll have to see it simply as physical properties. If you look at feelings, you'll have to see them as changing and inconstant, pleasure, pain, neither pleasure nor pain. To see these things is to see the truth within yourself. Don't let yourself get caught up with your external duties. Simply keep watch in this way inside. If your awareness is the sort that lets you read yourself correctly, the mind will be able to stay at normalcy, at equilibrium, at stillness, without any resistance. If the mind can stay with itself and not go out looking for things to criticize or latch onto, it can maintain a natural form of stillness. So this is something we have to try for in our every activity. Keep your conversations to a minimum, and there won't be a whole lot of issues. Keep watch right at the mind. When you keep watch at the mind, and your mindfulness is continuous, your senses can stay restrained. Being mindful to keep watch in this way is something you have to work at. Try it and see. Can you keep this sort of awareness continuous? What sort of things can still get the mind engaged? What sort of thoughts and labels of good and bad, me and mine, does it think up? Then look to see if these things arise and disband. The sensations that arise The sensations that arise from external contact and internal contact all have the same sorts of characteristics. You have to look till you can see this. If you know how to look, you'll see it, and the mind will grow calm. So the point we have to practice in this latter stage doesn't have a whole lot of issues. There's nothing you have to do, nothing you have to label, nothing you have to think a whole lot about. Simply look carefully and contemplate, and in this very lifetime, you'll have a chance to be calm and at peace, to know yourself more profoundly within. You'll come to see that the Dhamma is amazing, right here in your own heart. Don't go searching for the Dhamma outside, for it lies within. Peace lies within, but we have to contemplate so that we're aware all around, subtly, deep down. If you look just on the surface, you won't understand anything at all. Even if the mind is at normalcy on the ordinary everyday level, you won't understand much of anything. You have to contemplate so that you're aware all around in a skillful way. The word skillful is something you can't explain with words, but you know for yourself when you see the way in which awareness within the heart becomes special, when you see that this special awareness is about. This is something you can know for yourself. And there's really not much to it, simply arising, persisting, disbanding. Look until this becomes plain, really, really plain, and everything disappears. All suppositions, all conventional formulations, all those aggregates and properties get swept away, leaving nothing but awareness, pure and simple, not involved with anything at all. And there's nothing you have to do to it. Simply stay still and watch, be aware, letting go with every moment. Simply watching this one thing is enough to do away with all sorts of defilements, all sorts of suffering and stress. If you don't know how to watch it, the mind is sure to get disturbed. It's sure to label things and concoct thoughts. As soon as there's contact at the senses, it'll go looking for things to latch onto, liking and disliking the objects it meets in the present, and then getting involved with the past and future, spinning a web to entangle itself. If you truly look at each moment in the present, there's really nothing at all. You'll see with every mental moment that things disband, disband, disband. Really nothing at all. The important point is that you don't go forming issues out of nothing. The physical elements perform their duties in line with their elementary physical nature. The mental elements keep sensing in line with their own affairs. But our stupidity is what goes looking for issues to cook up, to label, to think about. It goes looking for things to latch onto, and then gets the mind into a turmoil. This point is all we really have to see for ourselves. This is the problem we have to solve for ourselves. If things are left to their nature, pure and simple, there's no us, no them. This is a singular truth that will arise for us to know and see. There's nothing else we can know or see that can match it in any way. Once you know and see this one thing, it extinguishes all suffering and stress. The mind will be empty and free, with no meanings, no attachments, for anything at all. This is why looking inward is so special in so many ways. Whatever arises, simply stop still to look at it. Don't get excited by it. If you become excited when any special intuitions arise when the mind is still, you'll get the mind worked up into a turmoil. If you become afraid that this or that will happen, that too will get you in a turmoil. So you have to stop and look, stop and know. The first thing is simply to look. The first thing is simply to know. And don't latch on to what you know, because whatever it is simply a phenomenon that arises and disbands, changing as a part of its nature. If you can take your stance at awareness, if you're skilled at looking, the mind can be at peace. You'll know how things arise and disband. First, practice keeping awareness right within yourself so that your mindfulness can be firm without being affected by the objects of sensory contact, so that it won't label things as good or bad, pleasing or displeasing. You have to keep checking to see that when the mind can be at normalcy, centered, and neutral as its primary stance, then whatever it knows or sees, it will be able to contemplate and let go. The sensations in the mind that we explain at such length are still on the level of labels. Only when there can be awareness right at awareness will you be really able to know that the mind that is aware of awareness in this way doesn't send its knowing outside of this awareness. there are no issues. Nothing can be concocted in the mind when it knows in this way. In other words, an inward staying, unentangled knowing, all outward going knowing cast aside.
Where did you ever meet Upasika Kee?
I did not. I went there after she passed away. I think she passed away in something like 79 or something. I went there, after she passed away. And then got to know a few of the community. Plern was close to that community. Plern had her fingers in a lot of pots.
Did Upasika Kee practice with any of the early on Ajahns, or was it more just...
No, she practiced on her own, and her connection, her main, teacher connection was Ajahn Buddhadasa. Because she's like Petbury? Blatbury. Sort of, but over on that side, on the way toward the south of Thailand, kind of the very top of the peninsula.
Do you know if there's, or anybody know if there's still community practicing there?
I think so, but I don't know for sure how vibrant it is or how.
I've always appreciated her directness and clarity. It's good stuff.
Oh yeah.
No fuss.
Yeah, I mean, when you read it, you can feel that directness. When you listen to her, it's even more no nonsense. I mean, she doesn't come across as a lot of frills there, but when she's speaking, she's even more.
Can I ask a question about being the knower? And with your practice, the depth of that, I'm sure increases the longer you practice, or when you do more intense practice, you're able to go deeper than when you come out back into the world. After how many, so many years of practice, how much does it fluctuate? And I'm sure it all depends. But how did you find through your experience and the course of your?
Oh, as much as I was willing to get myself distracted, which that kind of varied from time to time.
And being the abbot, taking on the roles.
That was not problematic.
Mm.
That was, if anything, that was probably pushed me even more to be very not to waste time.
So you were disciplined and you worked out a system to integrate it into your practice.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because also it was, when I first became abbot, and it was when Ajahn Chah first became ill. So it was also a period of time when I was really missing him as a teacher, as a presence, physical presence, but then also. There was great examples around me and good teachers around, but also internally, it was that sense of, well, you can moan and complain, or you can just practice. It seemed pretty obvious what needed to be done.
Do you think that propelled you to increase the intensity of your practice because you realized your teacher was ill and he wasn't there, so you had to step up,
absolutely,
more and inspire and be one of the leaders as well of the West?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I could always run to, whenever I felt really bad, I could always run to Lupa Cha. I couldn't do that. So I had to do what he'd been telling me for years to do, practice and bring the attention back inwards.